I came home after a 26-hour nursing shift and found a second fridge in the kitchen. My son's wife said with a sneer, "That one's mine. From now on, buy your own food." She put labels with her name on everything I bought, forgetting they lived there without paying a single dollar in rent. So I prepared a surprise that made them wake up crying. I got home after 26 straight hours at the hospital. 26 hours saving lives, holding trembling hands, cleaning wounds that weren't mine. My feet were on fire inside those once new white shoes. My back was a knot of pain. My hands smelled like disinfectant and the kind of exhaustion that seeps into your bones when you're not young anymore. I'm 67 years old. I'm a nurse, and I thought the hardest parts of my life were over. I was wrong. When I opened the door to my kitchen, the one I'd cleaned 1,000 times, where I'd cooked every one of my son's birthday meals, where I'd cried over my husband's death, I saw something that didn't belong. A new shiny silver refrigerator right next to mine. I just stood in the doorway, my bag hanging from my shoulder, trying to understand. Had they bought a fridge without telling me what for? Ours worked perfectly fine. Then I heard her voice. "That one's mine." Jessica, my daughter-in-law. She came out of the hallway with that face I knew all too well, that mix of disdain and boredom, as if I were an annoying fly in her space. "What did you say?" I asked. My voice sounded hoarse. I hadn't spoken to anyone outside the hospital for hours. "The fridge, it's mine." She crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. "From now on, buy your own food, Hope." She didn't call me mom-in-law. She didn't call me ma'am. She called me by my name like we were roommates, like this wasn't my house. I opened the old fridge, and the air left my lungs. Everything, absolutely everything I had bought 3 days before, had yellow sticky labels with her name written on them in black marker. Jessica, the cheese, the tomatoes, the yogurt, the beans, the chicken, even the butter. "What is this?" I whispered. "What I told you." "This is my food, you buy yours." She shrugged. "It's not fair that I have to share what I buy with my money." Her money. Jessica didn't work. She hadn't worked a single day since she married my son 2 years ago. Daniel was the one who supposedly brought in the money, although lately that money seemed to be coming from my own savings every time I loaned them cash for gas, for groceries, for some emergency. Daniel. I tried to call for my son, but he was already there, standing in his bedroom doorway, looking at me with eyes I no longer recognized. The same eyes that looked at me with love when he was a boy. Now there was only discomfort. "Mom, don't make a scene. Jessica's right. We should each buy our own stuff. It's more organized this way." I felt the floor shift beneath me. "But I bought this. I paid for this week's groceries." "And that's why it has her name on it, right?" Jessica said, pointing at the labels. "Now we all know what belongs to who. It's easier." I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip off every single yellow label and throw them in her face. But I was so tired, so terribly tired. I just nodded. I went to my room. I closed the door. And for the first time in years, I sat on the edge of my bed and let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened. They lived in my house, the house I bought by myself on my nurse's salary after my husband died and left me with nothing but debt and an 8-year-old son with chronic asthma. I worked double shifts, triple shifts. I scrubbed hospital floors at 3 in the morning to pay the mortgage. I skipped meals so Daniel could have his medicine. And now they were making me pay to eat in my own kitchen. I took off my shoes. My feet were swollen, red. I had a new blister on my left heel. I couldn't even remember when I got it. I heard laughter from the living room. Jessica and Daniel were watching TV. I heard the microwave beep, the smell of popcorn. Popcorn I couldn't eat because it had her name on it. I closed my eyes, and in that silence in the darkness of my own room, something inside me began to change. I didn't know it yet, but that night, exhausted and humiliated, was the last night I would let them treat me like a stranger in my own home. Because sometimes silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's just the calm before the storm. If this story is touching your heart, subscribe to the channel to follow me to the very end. Because what comes next, nobody saw coming. Not even me. But what I discovered a few days later would make those yellow labels seem like just the beginning of my ordeal. I thought the labels were rock bottom, that they couldn't sink any lower. How naive I was. 3 days later, I came back from another shift at the hospital. This time only 12 hours. But it had been 12 hours of hell. A little girl with severe burns. An old man who died while I held his hand because he had no family. I came home wanting nothing more than a hot cup of tea and silence. I went into the bathroom, and there they were. More yellow labels, on the shampoo, on the soap, on the toothpaste, even on the toilet paper. Jessica. I stood frozen, staring at my own toothbrush, the only object without a label, as if it were the last thing I had left in the world. I left the bathroom. I went to the kitchen. The pots had labels, the pans, the glasses, the plates. I opened the silverware drawer, even the forks, the damned forks. "Looking for something!" Jessica's voice came from right behind me. I jumped. I hadn't heard her come in. "Jessica, this is too much." "Too much?" She tilted her head with that smile that never reached her eyes. "Hope I'm just protecting my things. You know how it is. Sometimes things get lost, mixed up. This way, we all know what belongs to who. But I bought these pots. I bought these plates. 20 years ago." "Ah," she shrugged. "Then put your name on them, too. I put mine on what's mine." "And what exactly did you buy?" The words came out harsher than I intended. Her eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, mother-in-law. I'm your son's wife." I deserve respect. Respect. That word echoed in my head as she turned and walked back to the living room where the TV was still blaring. That night Jessica cooked. The smell filled the whole house. Pot roast, my favorite, the one I had taught her how to make when they first got married. In those early months when we were still pretending to be a happy family, I stayed in my room. My stomach was growling. I hadn't eaten dinner. I only had coffee at the hospital. I thought about going out, getting a little. It was pot roast. She had used my recipe, but I didn't. I couldn't. Not after the labels, not after understanding that every bite I took from that kitchen would be a defeat. I heard their laughter, Daniel and her. They were talking about a TV show, about going on vacation to Florida. "When we sell your mom's car, we could have enough for the hotel," Jessica said. Silence. "I don't know if she wants to sell it," Daniel answered in a weak voice. "Oh, honey, that car is old. She hardly uses it. We need it more." I didn't hear what my son said back. I only heard that he didn't defend me. The next morning I went downstairs early. I had the day off. I needed to talk to Daniel. Alone. Without her. I found him in the kitchen drinking coffee. My coffee. From my coffee maker, which now had a yellow label. "Son, we need to talk." He looked up. I saw the dark circles under his eyes. He looked tired, older than his 32 years. "Mom, if this is about the labels..." "It's not just about the labels, Daniel. It's about everything." I sat across from him. "It's about how you talk to me, how you treat me. This is my house." "I know." Do you really? Because it doesn't feel like it?" I took a deep breath. "You two don't pay rent. You don't pay utilities. You don't pay property taxes. Nothing. And now it turns out I can't even use my own soap." He rubbed his face. "Mom, Jessica is my wife. I have to support her." "If you don't like how she handles things, maybe you should think about finding your own place." The world stopped. My own place. I don't mean it in a bad way. But we're a young couple. We need our space, privacy. We can't always be worrying if how we organize the house bothers you. "My house, Daniel. My house. I know it's legally your house, Mom. You don't have to keep saying it." His tone became irritated. "But it's also where I live, where my wife lives. And frankly, sometimes I feel like Jessica is right. You're very old-fashioned. You don't understand how modern families work." I stood up. I didn't say anything else. What could I say? I went up to my room. I took out a box from the closet. A box I hadn't opened in years. Inside were photos. Daniel as a baby, Daniel with his nebulizer, those huge eyes looking at me with fear every time he couldn't breathe, Daniel at his middle school graduation, at his first communion, at the hospital, after the surgery that saved his life when he was 11, the surgery that cost $28,000, that I paid for by selling my car, taking out loans, working at 2 hospitals at once. I ran my fingers over the photos, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel love. I felt something colder, more dangerous. I felt clarity, because my son had just told me to find another place to live, in the house I bought, with the money I earned caring for the sick while he slept peacefully, knowing his mom would never let him fall. I put the photos away. That night Jessica cooked again, this time a casserole. The smell was a knife in my empty stomach. I didn't leave my room. I stayed there in the dark, listening to their laughter. And I started to plan, because if 39 years of being a nurse had taught me anything, it was this: you don't heal pain by ignoring it. You heal it by cutting out what's rotten. And something in that house had rotted. But what I found 2 days later hidden in my son's drawer would change everything forever. On Saturday I decided to clean, not because the house needed it, but because I needed to do something with my hands. Something to make me feel like I still had control over some corner of my own life. Jessica and Daniel had gone out to look at some things for the apartment, they said. I didn't ask what apartment. I didn't ask anything anymore. I started with the living room, then the bathroom. Then I stopped in front of Daniel's bedroom door. His room. The one that had been his since he was 8. The one I painted blue because it was his favorite color. The one we filled with soccer posters and then rock band posters. I went in. The bed was unmade. Clothes were thrown on the floor. It smelled of that sweet perfume Jessica wore. Nothing of my son's smell. The boy who smelled like soap and dirt after playing outside. I started picking up. I folded the clothes. I made the bed. I wiped down the furniture. And then I saw the nightstand drawer was slightly open. I wasn't going to open it. I really wasn't. But something shiny inside caught my eye. The afternoon sun was hitting it directly, and the glint got my attention. I opened the drawer. Papers. Lots of messy papers. Old receipts. Printed photos of Jessica at the beach and expensive restaurants at bars. All recent. All taken while I was loaning them money for gas. I kept digging, not knowing exactly what I was looking for. And then I saw it. A manila envelope. Thick. With my name written on top in Daniel's handwriting. Mom, important documents. I took them out with trembling hands. Inside were the deeds to the house, the ones I kept in my room and my filing cabinet. How did they get in here? Underneath the deeds was another document. A promissory note, notarized, dated 2 years ago. Loan, $45,000. Debtor Daniel Miller. Creditor Hope Miller. Purpose initial investment for an imported auto parts business. I remembered everything. 2 years ago, Daniel came to me excited. He had a plan. A friend had proposed a business idea, importing car parts from overseas. He was going to be a millionaire. He just needed $45,000 to start. I had that money. I had saved it for 10 years. It was for my retirement, for when I couldn't work anymore. But he was my son, my only son. I'll pay you back in 6 months, Mom, with interest. You'll see. We signed it in front of a notary because he insisted. So you see I'm serious, he said. The business never worked out. The friend disappeared with part of the money. Daniel never spoke of the loan again. And I never asked him about it, because he was my son, and a mother doesn't charge for what she gives with love. Or does she? I kept looking through the envelope. There were more papers, bank statements, from 6 months ago, an account I didn't recognize, in Daniel's name, with regular deposits of $1,500, $2,000. Where was this money coming from if he supposedly wasn't working? And at the very bottom, a folded piece of paper. I unfolded it. It was a printout of text messages between Daniel and Jessica. Jessica. I already talked to the realtor. He says this house in this area is worth like $300,000. Daniel. That's a lot. Jessica. That's the point, honey. Your mom is old. She's not going to live forever. And when she's gone, who is she going to leave the house to? Daniel? Me? I'm an only child. Jessica, exactly. But why wait? Convince her to sell it. We'll tell her it's so she can move somewhere smaller, easier to manage. She keeps 100 grand, we keep 200. And with that, we can start our real life, far away from here. Daniel. I don't know. She's going to be mad. Jessica. She'll get over it. Besides, what's she going to do? Kick us out? You're her son. She won't leave you on the street. We'll give her a few months of the special treatment. Soften her up, and that's it. Daniel's special treatment, LOL. Jessica. You'll see. In 2 months, she'll be begging us to help her sell. The date on the message, 3 months ago. The labels appeared 2 weeks after that conversation. I dropped the papers. I sat on my son's bed, and I started to shake. Not from fear, from rage. Pure boiling rage that rose from my stomach to my throat. They were pushing me out of my own house, with a plan, step by step, humiliation by humiliation. And my son. My son knew. He had planned it. I took pictures of everything with my phone. The messages, the promissory note, the bank statements, the deeds that had no business being in that drawer. I put everything back exactly as I found it. I closed the drawer, I left the room, and I went down to the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped it. I looked around. The 2 fridges, the yellow labels on everything. The house I bought with my pain, with my night shifts, with my knees ruined from standing 12 hours a day. The house where I raised my son alone after his father died. The son who now wanted to sell it, to leave with his wife, far away from me. I wiped away the tears I didn't know were falling, and in that moment, something inside me broke for good, but not how they expected. I didn't break down, I broke forward, because it's one thing to forgive, it's another to be a fool. And I had been a fool long enough. I took out my phone, I searched online. Eviction lawyer Chicago. Several names popped up. I chose one, Mr. Ernest Miller, good reviews, office near downtown. I dialed. A secretary answered. Miller Law Firm, good afternoon. Good afternoon. My voice sounded firm, surprisingly firm. I need an urgent appointment. I want to evict someone from my property. Is it a tenant? No, it's my son. There was a brief silence. I see. When can you come in? Tomorrow if possible. Let me check. Yes, we have a spot at 11 in the morning. I'll be there. I hung up. I heard the front door open. They were back. We're home, Jessica yelled in that sing-song voice she used when she was in a good mood. Hope, is there anything for dinner? I took a deep breath. I walked out of the kitchen with a smile. Not yet. Do you want me to make something? Jessica looked at me surprised. Daniel, too. Yeah. Whatever is fine, my son said. Perfect. I nodded. I'll make you some eggs. It'll be ready in a minute. They looked at me strangely. Of course they did. I had barely spoken to them for days, barely left my room. But now I was smiling, because now I knew something they didn't. Wars aren't won by the one who shouts the loudest. They're won by the one who strikes when the enemy lets their guard down. That night I cooked them dinner. I set the table. I even washed the dishes. Jessica and Daniel exchanged confused glances. Are you okay, Mom? He asked. Very well, son. I just thought... You're right. I've been too tense. I'm sorry about that. Jessica smiled, a victorious smile. I'm glad you understand, Hope. In the end, we all want what's best for the family, right? Of course, I replied, looking her straight in the eye. What's best for the family? I went up to my room, closed the door, and for the first time in weeks, I slept soundly, because tomorrow the war would begin, and they didn't even know they had already lost. What the lawyer told me the next day was the beginning of the end for them. On Monday, at 11 o'clock sharp, I was sitting across from Mr. Ernest Miller. His office smelled of coffee and old paper. He had a huge bookshelf filled with legal codes. On the wall, his law degree hung next to a picture with the governor. He looked serious, but his eyes were kind. Tell me everything, Mrs. Miller. Take your time. And I told him. The labels, the messages, the loan, they never paid back the house in my name, everything. He took notes, nodding occasionally. When I finished, he took off his glasses and looked at me intently. Do you have proof of all this? I have pictures of the messages. I have the notarized promissory note for the loan. I have the deeds to the house. Everything is in my name. Do they pay rent? No. Nothing utilities. Not those either. I pay for everything. Electricity, water, gas, property tax, internet. Everything. He nodded slowly. Ma'am, legally, you have every right to evict them. It's your property. They have no lease agreement. They pay nothing. They are what we call occupants without title. He paused. But he's your son. Are you sure about this? I was quiet for a moment. Was I sure? I thought about the yellow labels, the messages planning to sell my house, Daniel telling me to find another place. Yes, I replied. I'm sure. All right, I need you to sign a power of attorney. We'll start the legal process. It will take a few weeks, but we can speed things up if they don't cooperate. He opened a folder. We can also claim the loan. With interest, we'd be talking about, let me calculate, around $62,000. The figure made me dizzy. That much? Interest accumulates, ma'am. And your son signed a legal promissory note. That's money you can claim. I signed the papers. I paid the retainer fee for his services, $1,500 money I had saved for emergencies. This was an emergency. I left the office with a strange feeling in my chest, as if I had just jumped out of a plane without being sure the parachute would open, but there was no turning back. That same evening, I got home later than usual. I had stopped by the supermarket. I bought my own things, mine, the ones I would label if necessary. When I opened the door, I heard voices in the living room, many voices. I walked in and froze. Jessica's parents, Sebastian and Rachel, were sitting on my couch as if they owned the place. Ah, the mother-in-law has arrived, Rachel said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Good evening, I mumbled. Hope, come sit down, Jessica said, pointing to a chair, a single chair in my own living room while they occupied the couches. I sat. What else could I do? Look, mother-in-law. Sebastian began, a heavy-set man with a mustache and a booming voice. We've gathered here because we need to talk about something important as a family. As a family. Jessica told us about the situation. He continued. And we understand it's hard for you, but you have to be reasonable. Reasonable about what? I asked. About the space, Rachel chimed in. This house is big, yes, but 3 adults living together is complicated. The kids need their privacy. They're at an age where they want to start their own family, and well, you're in a different stage of life. I felt my blood boil. Another stage. Don't take it the wrong way, Sebastian said. We're just saying it might be better for everyone if you considered options. What options? Jessica leaned forward. There are some very nice retirement communities, Hope. Places where you'd be with people your age with nurses' activities. You wouldn't be lonely. A nursing home, I said, my voice flat. It's not a nursing home, Daniel quickly added. They're like communities, and you don't have to go far. There's one here in the city just off the highway. We went to see it. It's nice. You went to see it, I repeated. Without me. An awkward silence. We wanted to surprise you, Jessica said. Look, we even took pictures. She showed me her phone. Pictures of a gray building with gardens, small rooms, elderly people in wheelchairs. I saw myself there in that place, waiting to die. And this house? I asked, my voice trembling. Well, Daniel scratched the back of his neck. Jessica and I would stay here. Eventually, maybe we'd sell it, get something smaller, but that would be later. Of course, I said. Later. The important thing is that you'd be well taken care of, Rachel insisted, and the kids could start their life for real. And who would pay for this community? I asked. More silence. Well, you have your pension from the hospital, Jessica said. And if you sell your car, you'd have enough for the first few months. We'll figure out the rest later. We'll see. My car, the one I bought 5 years ago. the only luxury I had given myself in decades. And if I sell the car, how would I get to work? I still work, in case you've forgotten. Oh, Hope, Rachel sighed. At your age, you should be thinking about retiring, enjoying life. I'm 67. Not 80, I retorted. But you work too much, Jessica said in a syrupy voice. You get tired, you get sick. Wouldn't it be better to rest? I looked at my son. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the floor. Is that what you want, Daniel, for me to leave? He looked up. I saw something in his eyes. Guilt, shame. Mom, we just want what's best for you. What's best for me? I stood up. Or what's best for you? Don't start with your drama, Jessica said, rolling her eyes. It's not drama, Jessica. It's a question. What do you gain if I leave? You gain, she exploded. You gain peace and quiet. You gain care. You gain not having to clean this huge house. This house that I bought. Oh, here we go. Always the same thing. My house, my house. Jessica stood up too. Yes, it's your house. But it's also where your son lives. Or what are you going to kick him out? Jessica, calm down, Sebastian said. I won't calm down. I'm sick of this situation. She turned to me. Ever since I came to this house, I've tried to get along with you. But you only know how to play the victim. Everything has to be your way. Well, not anymore, Hope. You're not the only one living here anymore. And if you can't accept that, then yes, maybe you should find another place. The silence that followed was thick. I looked at Daniel. Do you think the same? He rubbed his face. Mom, I think Jessica has a point. You can't keep controlling everything. This house, yes, you bought it. But it's my home too. And if I want to live here with my wife, that's my decision. Your decision. I felt something break in my chest. And what am I? An inconvenience. Nobody said that. Rachel intervened. You don't have to say it, I murmured. I turned and walked up the stairs. Behind me, I heard Jessica. Oh, now she's mad. She'll be over it by tomorrow. And laughter, soft laughter, as if none of this mattered. I went into my room. I locked the door. And this time I did cry. I cried like I hadn't cried in years. I cried for the son I raised, for the sleepless nights when he had a fever, for the 3 jobs I worked to pay for his school, for every dollar I saved, thinking about his future. I cried until there were no tears left. And when I was done, I washed my face. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were red, swollen, deep, dark circles. But I also had something new in my gaze. Decision. I took out my phone. I found Mr. Miller's number. I sent him a message. Mr. Miller, proceed with everything. I want them out of my house as soon as possible. The reply came in seconds. Understood, Mrs. Miller. We will file the lawsuit tomorrow. I put the phone away. I lay down. And before I fell asleep, I whispered into the darkness, Forgive me, Daniel, but I can't save you from yourself anymore. What happened 3 days later would make Jessica stop smiling forever. The next few days were strange. I acted normal. Too normal. I said hello in the mornings. I made my breakfast without complaining about the labels. I went to work. I came back. I shut myself in my room. Jessica was confused. I saw her looking at me several times with a frown as if trying to figure out what had changed. Daniel simply avoided me. He left early. He came back late. When we crossed paths, he looked away. Good. Let them think I had given up. Let them think I had accepted my fate as a bothersome old woman who would soon go quietly to a retirement home. But at night when they slept, I worked. I watched. I listened. I investigated. I figured out their routines. Jessica got up at noon. She took a shower. In my master bathroom, which now had a lock on the outside. And she went out. Sometimes to the hair salon, sometimes for coffee with friends. She came back with shopping bags. Zara, Bershka, brands I could never afford for myself. Daniel left early supposedly to look for a job, but he came back smelling of beer, of cigarettes, with red eyes. One Tuesday night while they were watching a movie in the living room, I went into their room again. This time I knew exactly what I was looking for. I checked the pillowcase drawer. I went through the clothes. Nothing. I looked under the bed. Shoe boxes. I opened them one by one. In the third one, I found what I needed. Bank statements, updated to last month. Regular deposits of $1,800 every 15 days. Where was it coming from? I kept looking. There were receipts from bars, from expensive restaurants, one from the Marriott Hotel. A hotel. Why did they need a hotel if they lived here? And then I saw a sealed envelope. I opened it. Inside was a brochure from a real estate agency. Pre-sale apartments, a fancy neighborhood, starting at $280,000. One of the apartments was circled in red marker. A 3-bedroom, $320,000. On the last page in Jessica's handwriting, with the sale of the old lady's house, $300K approx, minus $80K for her. We're left with $2.2 million, plus a bank loan of $1 million, so $3.2 million. Perfect. $80,000 for me, from my $300,000 house. The math of my own betrayal, written in red marker. I took pictures of everything. The bank statements, the brochure, the hotel receipts. I put everything back exactly where it was. I left the room. They were still in the living room. I heard Jessica laughing at something in the movie. I went up to my room. I downloaded the photos to my laptop. I backed them up to the cloud. And then I did something I never thought I would do. I wrote to Patricia. Patricia was my colleague at the hospital. We had worked together for 15 years. She had known Daniel since he was a child. She had watched him grow up. Patty, I need a favor. Do you know anyone who can investigate where some bank deposits are coming from? She replied in minutes. My cousin is an accountant. He works for the IRS. What do you need? I need to know if my son is declaring that income and where it's coming from. Send me the details. I'll let you know tomorrow. I sent her pictures of the bank statements. The next morning, Patricia called me during my break at the hospital. Hope your son is in trouble. What did you find? Those deposits are coming from a shell company, one that's used for fraudulent invoicing. It's tax fraud. If the IRS finds out, he's going to face a massive fine, maybe even jail time. My blood ran cold. Jail? This is serious hope. Your son is receiving dirty money. Someone is using him to launder money or evade taxes. And he's the one who's going to pay if this blows up. How do you know he knows? Because he signs the receipts. He has an account where the money goes. He can't claim he didn't know. I hung up trembling. My son. My son was involved in something illegal. That night I came home determined to talk to him, alone. But when I walked in, I heard agitated voices from the kitchen. I told you had to be more discreet. Daniel's voice sounded desperate. Don't talk to me like that, Jessica retorted. It's not my fault your mom is so nosy. What happened? Daniel asked. Nothing, it's just... I saw her looking at my phone the other day. I'm sure of it. When I went to the bathroom, my phone was in a different position. You're paranoid. I'm not paranoid. That old woman knows something. I can feel it. Silence. What could she know? Daniel asked, but his voice sounded nervous. I don't know, but we need to speed things up. Talk to her. Convince her to sell the house now, or to sign it over to you. Something. The longer this takes, the riskier it gets. I can't push her anymore. She's already mad. We'll find a way. Jessica's voice turned cold. Because if this falls through, Daniel, I'm leaving. I didn't come here to live with your mom forever. I came because you promised me a life and apartment trips, and so far, all I have are labels in a kitchen that isn't even mine. I love you, Jess. You know that. Love doesn't pay the bills. Money does. I backed away from the door before they could see me. I went up to my room, my heart racing. I had all the pieces now. The illegal money, the plans to sell the house, the pressure for me to leave. It was all connected. I took out my laptop. I opened a new document, and I started writing a timeline, with dates, with evidence, with photos. Every humiliation, every lie, every yellow label. I spent the whole night doing that, organizing my defense like it was a case at the hospital, systematizing the pain. At dawn, I printed everything out, 3 copies, one for the lawyer, one for me, one for, well, I'd see what for. I showered, I got dressed, I made coffee. When I went down to the kitchen, Daniel was already there. He looked terrible, sunken eyes, unshaven. Good morning, I said calmly. He looked at me, surprised. Good morning, Mom. I made my breakfast. Toast, black coffee, fruit. He kept staring at me. Are you okay? He finally asked. I looked him in the eye. Very well, son. Why? I don't know. You look different. I smiled. I slept well, that's all. A lie. I hadn't slept at all, but he didn't need to know that. I finished my breakfast. I washed my plate. I gathered my things. I'm off to the hospital. I'll be back tonight. Mom, he stopped me before I left. About the other day, about the retirement home. You don't have to decide now. I know, I replied. Don't worry. And I left. In the car before starting the engine, I called Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, it's Hope. I have more information. I think my son is involved in something illegal. I have proof. Come to the office. Today, if you can. I'm on my way. I hung up. I started the car, and as I drove through the streets of Chicago with the morning sun on my face, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power. Because I was no longer the foolish old woman who put up with everything for love. Now I was the lioness protecting what was hers, and no one was going to drive this lioness out of her den. But what was about to happen would not only get them out of my house, it would make them kneel before me. On Thursday, I returned from a 14-hour shift. It had been brutal. 2 code blues, a patient who didn't make it, a family crying in my arms asking me why God had taken her. I didn't have answers. I never did. I came home dragging my feet. Everything hurt, my back, my knees, even my soul. All I wanted was a hot bath and to sleep. I opened the door. The smell hit me first. Food, roast chicken, potatoes, that smell that makes you salivate instantly. I walked into the kitchen, and I stood frozen. My fridge was open. Empty. Completely empty. On the floor next to the trash can were my things. The yogurt I had bought 2 days ago, the ham, the cheese, the tomatoes, the tortillas, all thrown into a black bag. What? I whispered. Oh, you're back. Jessica walked into the kitchen, wiping her hands on a napkin. She was wearing a new blouse, very expensive. I could see it from the tag still hanging from the collar. I had to throw out your food. You did what? It was spoiled, she said with a shrug. It smelled horrible. It was contaminating my fridge. You know how it is. When things get mixed up, everything ends up smelling bad. That food was fine. I bought it 2 days ago. Well, I smelled it, and it was rotten. She looked at me with those cold eyes. Besides Hope, I already told you. If you want to store food, buy your own fridge, like I did. I looked at the trash bag. There it was, my week's worth of groceries. $20 thrown in the trash. Something inside me snapped. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't explosive. It was silent. Like when a rope that's been stretched too tight finally breaks. It just snapped. Where's Daniel? I asked in a hollow voice. In the living room. Why? I didn't answer. I walked to the living room. My son was sprawled on the couch looking at his phone. Beer in hand. The third empty bottle was on the coffee table. Daniel. He looked up. What's up, Mom? Your wife threw my food in the trash. Oh yeah, she told me. It was spoiled. It wasn't spoiled. Mom. He sighed as if I were a bratty child. If Jessica says it was bad, it was bad. She knows about these things. She knows. I felt my voice break. I've been buying food for 40 years. I think I know when something is rotten. Just drop it. He stood up, stumbling a little. He was drunk. I'm tired of your drama. My drama? The words came out like knives. My drama, Daniel. She threw out $20 worth of food. $20 that I earned working while you sit here drinking beer that I paid for. You didn't pay for this beer. Jessica bought it. With what money, Daniel? With what money does Jessica buy things if she doesn't work? That's not your problem. Of course it's my problem. You live in my house, eat my food, use my utilities. That's enough, he yelled. For the first time in years, my son yelled at me. I'm sick of it. Sick of everything having to be about you. Your house, your food, your money. We get it. You did everything. You're the great martyr, the saintly mother who sacrificed everything. The words hit me like fists. Daniel. No. I'm tired of it, Mom. I'm tired of feeling guilty for existing, of feeling like I owe you every breath because you worked so hard. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask for Dad to die. Those were your choices, not mine. The silence that followed was unbearable. Jessica appeared in the doorway. She had a small, triumphant smile. I looked at my son, at this 32-year-old man with eyes red from alcohol and rage, and I didn't recognize him. The boy who used to hug my legs when he had nightmares. The teenager who brought me flowers on Mother's Day with his first paycheck. The young man who cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend left him. That boy was gone. In his place was a stranger who hated me. All right. I said, my voice so low I could barely hear myself. All right. I turned, went up the stairs, went into my room, locked the door, and then for the first time in my life, I felt like I couldn't breathe. Not physically. My lungs were working, but something deeper, something in the center of my chest had closed up. I sat on the bed, took out my phone. With trembling hands, I dialed my sister Lucy. She lived in another state. We didn't see each other much, but we had always been there for each other. "Hope, what's wrong?" she answered, concerned. It was 10 at night. And then I broke down. I told her everything. Between sobs, between hiccups, the labels, the messages, the loan, the food in the trash. Daniel's words. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. When I finished, there was silence. "Hope," she finally said in a serious voice, "you have to get him out of your house. He's my son. He's ungrateful." Then her voice was hard. "And that woman is a snake. They're going to leave you with nothing, and when they do, they'll leave. And you'll be left alone without a house, without money, without anything." "But—" "There are no buts, sister. I know you love him, but love can't be that blind. Sometimes loving someone means letting them fall.